Eating disorder. An eating disorder is a mental disorder defined and characterized by abnormal eating habits that lead to significant clinical distress and impairment in social functioning. Before we dive deeper into the various types of eating disorders, let's first learn about their history. Anorexia nervosa. In the Middle Ages, self-starvation was associated with demonic possession. During the Renaissance, anorexia nervosa behaviors were commonly seen as religious practices. One of the famous examples is Saint Catherine of Siena. In 1874, Sir William Gull first coined the term anorexia nervosa. Bulimia nervosa. Bulimia nervosa, which is associated with self-induced vomiting, was actually a medical practice in ancient Egypt and Rome, and in part of religious practices in the Middle Ages. Today, there is a long list of eating disorders that have been identified by the DSM-5, the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Some of these are pica, rumination disorder, avoidant/restrictive food intake disorder, and other specified/unspecified feeding or eating disorders. But what exactly causes eating disorders? When it comes to what causes eating disorders, there are many misconceptions. Speculations are that the victims of eating disorders just care too much about their weight. It only happens to girls. Eating disorders only happen to moms. They're caused purely by pressure from society on women. They're only for really skinny people. They are something that with enough effort can easily be overcome. But the truth is that eating disorders are complex and cannot be blamed on a single cause. To understand them best, we have to look at both genes, biological causes and genetic dispositions, and genes, socio-cultural influences. To demonstrate a better understanding of eating disorders, we will provide 2 case studies, Anna and Mia. Both women have been diagnosed with eating disorders. Mia has been diagnosed with bulimia, and Anna has been diagnosed with anorexia. In order to be diagnosed with anorexia, Anna had to meet the requirements listed by the DSM-5. These include A. Restriction of energy intake, B. Intense fear of gaining weight or becoming fat, even though underweight, and C. Disturbance in the way in which one's body weight or shape is experienced. To be diagnosed with bulimia, Mia had to meet these criteria. A. Binging. B. Purging. C. For the binge eating and purging to have occurred at least once a week for 3 months. And D. For her self-evaluation to be unduly influenced by her body shape and weight. So what exactly makes someone more or less likely to develop an eating disorder? Research has shown that people who later develop an eating disorder often display certain characteristics when they are children, such as perfectionism, achievement-oriented attitudes, obsessionality, sensitivity to criticism, anxiety, harm avoidance, rule-bound behaviors, and impulsiveness. Let's look at what this would look like in Mia and Anna. From a young age, Mia excelled and worked herself very hard in dance, always striving to get the best places. She took harsh criticism from her coaches and from herself, yearning for praise from her parents and from others. She always felt happiest when she received this praise. From a young age, Anna always got good grades. She took them very seriously and cried whenever she got a B on a test. She valued strict order and cleanliness, preferring to control her peers in activities. According to biology, These characteristics are something Anna and Mia are born with, things that are encoded in brain circuitry, and probably something their parents passed on and encouraged. But as they get older, we see these characteristic traits turn into unhealthy behavior. According to biology, during puberty the brain is developing and hormones are causing large changes in the body. According to culture, adolescence is a time when societal stressors increase and individuals are greatly targeted by cultural influences. Sociocultural theory states that there are specific messages that reflect a culture's ideology and are conveyed by other socialization agents and mediating factors that influence an individual's behavior. There has been a secular trend where the female body significantly decreased in the 20th century, and this is correlated with the increased rate of eating disorders. The more one is exposed to a culture, the more likely it is for them to display behaviors that are common and consistent with that culture. Let's look at Mia and Anna using the tripartite pathway model. Mia was influenced by her sphere of friends to body shame and to take on some restrictive eating habits in order to keep an ideal body shape for performing. It never seemed abnormal to obsess over the amount of calories she was intaking or the size of her thighs and arms, since all of her friends did as well. Both of Mia's parents had been competitive athletes when they were younger, and they encouraged her to watch her food intake. Diets were a commonality in her family. Her father encouraged her to limit her unhealthy eating, but to partake in cheat days where they would consume large amounts of unhealthy food. Her mother sometimes made comments that if she wanted to land a top role in a ballet, she might have to lose a few pounds to keep up with her competition. Like any teenager, Mia was also influenced by television series and social media that portrayed dancers and athletes as much slimmer than they often were in real life. She internalized these images as ideals of what her body should look like in order to be a successful athlete. Eventually, these pressures led her to see herself as imperfect. Constantly aware that her body was something that would be viewed by an audience, she took on what we call the objectification theory, adopting a third-person view of herself and caring more about how others saw her. Going into high school, Anna's group of friends began to focus more on their appearances. Many of her friends were in sports and able to maintain small physiques. Anna didn't really care for sports and focused greatly on her academics, but still compared herself to her friends and desired to stay small as well. Anna's parents both have histories of struggling to maintain their weight and often do trendy diets. Her mother educated her about calories in food and foods that she should be staying away from. When she saw Anna losing weight, she complimented her. Anna saw women role models on TV who were successful, intelligent, confident, and always thin. From this, she learned that in order to appear in control of her own life and responsible to be desirable to colleagues and later employers, she would need to be thin. According to biology, often what begins as dieting or intake monitoring will lead to weight loss. Neurobiological circuits that are involved in the reward system of the brain begin to be wired to value the food inhibition. Sometimes such rewards will lead directly to chronic illness. Often this rewiring of the brain can lead to denial, rigidity, anxiety, and depression, which motivates an individual to continue compulsory behavior until extremely unhealthy states. Individuals with eating disorders have an imbalance between their limbic, emotional and reward system, and their cognitive, planning and consequence analysis system. Studies have shown that individuals with eating disorders exhibit temperament and personality traits which are related to these neural circuit functions that are important in the development and maintenance of the disorder. This neurobiologically based temperament is characterized by 1. Elevated anxiety/harm avoidance, 2. Altered reward sensitivity, 3. Altered cognitive flexibility/inhibition, and 4, altered interoceptive awareness. This all contributes to appetite dysregulation and disordered eating. This would suggest that Anna's neural circuits involved in cognitive control and mood regulation have outweighed her neural circuits involved in rewards. This means the signals her CNS receives from her stomach are not translated into actions to eat, and they would be for someone without anorexia. Avoiding eating can actually help Anna regulate her mood and feel comfortable in her body. After a long time of dealing with stressors in such a way, there are consequences. These behaviors can have great long-term effect on one's health. In the case of Anna, she suffered from significant amount of weight loss and showed clear signs of malnutrition. She lost more than 10% of her body weight in the span of 6 months. Moreover, she also experienced mild complications with water loading. She would get dizzy and feel nauseous. For Mia, she had various musculoskeletal problems. There was a decrease in bone density, which was related to weight loss. In addition, there was also a diffuse in muscle wasting where she would experience pain and feel weak. Her BMI was also lower than 80% of the median BMI in females. On the other hand, she also had dermatologic complications, including hair loss and Russell sign. As demonstrated in the cases of Mia and Anna, eating disorders are both complex and serious. They are unique to every individual, yet also something that no one is going through alone. We hope to create better support for victims of eating disorders by better educating people about how they are caused and the complex role between genes and genes.